Alrighty guys, so in this video I'm going to show to you the orchids that I have in bloom in the month of October. I have quite a few of them, and these are not all, but I will start from here from the left. This orchid originally had about 6 blooms if I remember, but some of them already faded. The color is really pretty. What you see on the screen is the real color of the orchid. It is not modified in any way, but this orchid is suffering from a slightly mutation on the lip. Mostly all of the blooms were this way, but I'm going to check when the orchid is going to be a bit more healthy, because I have just purchased it. I'm going to see if the rebloom is going to look the same. The orchid is just recently moved into a self-watering pot in a semi-hydro with a wick, and I can see I have some moldy media here that often appears when you have some dead materials in there, so I'm going to do a separate video about that. No worries. Here I have my Oncidium dancing lady, very pretty orchid. This is a second spike that I got. This spike was the one with which I have purchased it. Really pretty one. I absolutely love this orchid. I love the coloration, but this orchid is able to produce huge spikes with many branches, so this is nowhere near the full potential of the orchid. This is a recent purchase also, and this one also has some moldy medium there, so she's going to get repotted into semi-hydro as soon as I'm going to have some new growths, because this is a horrible time to repot it. If it doesn't have any growths, if the older roots are affected, as we can most probably assume they are, it's not a good idea to repot it in this stage. At least those roots are functional in that bad environment, so I'm going to wait. Here it is my Paph Pinocchio. It looks so pretty. This is a sequential bloomer. I really love the coloration and the little hairs I have here and here. The pink is also really striking, and here are the next buds that are starting to form. Again, this orchid is species if I remember correctly, and here on the leaves we have some little hairs, so that is quite pretty also. And this orchid is an absolute drinker. It had some snails in the old pot it came with. This is a recent purchase also. I have her for about 2 months, and for 2 months it has been blooming reliably. And I have immediately changed it into semi-hydro, and it is drinking that water so fast that I think I am going to put it in a self-watering pot, so it is going to have a bigger reservoir. Here we have my Vanda Delight, and I am going to turn off the flashlight because that is not the real color of the orchid. This one in real life is much more of a indigo color, but my camera, at least in my eyes, it does show it a bit pinky, and that is not true, not at all. So that is that. Really pretty one. This is a rebloom, as I said, and it is not a striking one, but it does have a few blooms. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This orchid is able to produce much more blooms than this, but who knows, maybe I didn't water it enough. I'm going to see. I know it is able to produce more than one spike at a time, but this is the 3rd time that she blooms in this season for me, that she reblooms for me. So it might be that it is a bit tired, let's say. So we are going to see what we are going to get next time. Here we have the Phalaenopsis bellina crossed with self. I have bought this orchid about 2 months ago from Orchid Garden in Poland. Very pretty one, very fragrant. We can see that the coloration of the bloom is really pretty. I tried to pollinate it, but I was not successful. I'm going to try again a bit later. This orchid has 2 spikes and it is growing a cakey at the base, so I'm quite proud of her. Next we have the Cattleya Sweet Chief Orange. with a spike, beautiful spike with 3 blooms. It is the first time this orchid reblooms for me, and I'm quite impressed with the coloration, with the texture of the sepals and petals. It is also quite fragrant. The blooms, though, I would have expected them to open completely, be more flat-like, but we can see that the petals are a bit oriented inwards, so that is that. But the coloration is beautiful. It has a sweet floral scent, very, very pretty, and it is growing another new growth, which is quite nice. This orchid is able to produce up to 7 blooms per spike. It is a sort of a cluster of a bloomer. This is why the blooms are so separated in between them, because in its genetic it is that she produces more than 3 blooms. But as I said, the first time she bloomed for me, quite proud of her, very, very beautiful. Here we have the Phalaenopsis Sogovivian. This is a variegated orchid, which means it has yellow stripes on the leaves. Quite pretty one. This is the orchid with which I tried to pollinate the Bellina, but I was trying to obtain a hybrid with variegated leaves. We are going to see if I will be successful next time. Here we have my pride and joy. This is the Cattleya gaskeliana, quite a huge orchid, as we can see, or the bloom. It is the first time it reblooms for me, and I have 2 blooms on one spike and 1 bloom, a smaller one, the third one here. Very, very pretty, incredibly fragrant. This is an orchid species, and the fragrance is even more beautiful than on lilies, so imagine that. My entire house is smelling like this orchid right now, and every time I see her I am amazed. The petals and sepals are quite fragile. It does not have a very thick texture. It is, as I said, very easy to damage if you are not careful, so you should make sure you put her somewhere where you are not going to touch it in any way. You don't want to ruin these blooms. It is in bloom for about 3 weeks now, and on the first bloom it has opened. We can see I'm getting the first signs of fading. It is going to last for about 2 more weeks, because this bloom opened just 1 week ago, so quite a pretty one. Imagine if you have a specimen with these big blooms and the amazing fragrance. Quite nice. I also love that inside the lip here I have these stripes. Quite beautiful. I cannot wait to see the Alba variety blooming as well. I have both of them. This is the standard variety, let's say. Very, very fragrant and very beautiful. Next we have an Oncidium hybrid. Let's see if I put the tag. It is something tiger tail, something of the sorts. Alright, so it is an Oncidium Tiger Brew Pacific Holiday. Very pretty one. It is not fragrant, but I love how the yellow, white and orange plays out. Quite nice. It is able to produce much more bigger spikes than this, but it is a rather smallish orchid, recently purchased. Curious how it is going to rebloom for me. I have so many buds and spike going out right now. This is my Oncidium Cherry Baby. It has 3 spikes, and look how big they are. It is loving growing in a self-watering pot. That way it never dries out for me again. Here I have Fragmipedium, which I am trying to sell because I have discovered I have 2 that are very, very similar, and I don't need 2 orchids which look almost the same. Growing quite nice in semi-hydro. Here I have my Cattleya Downiana, which actually has a bud in here, but unfortunately I have recently discovered that I have an infestation with thrips, so I need right now to go ahead and treat all my orchid collection. It is very important when you are doing sprays for pests that you choose the right moment in which you are going to treat them, because many of the orchids will drop its already opened blooms. The buds are not affected, the blooms are. So I'm going to have careful how I separate and how I treat them. Here I have the so-called Princess Jackie Cattleya with 2 blooms here, and many sheets on the other growths. It has grown exceptionally well for me if I take into account that I have just purchased this one. Here it is my Laelia purpurata with a huge sheet in on this new growth. And for the first time it is producing a second growth this year, which already has a sheet inside, so I'm going to have more blooms than this. My RRC Xingfeng orange with a sheet in here and a second growth in here. And finally my Brassavola my Brassavola cuculata is going to have 3 spikes. One in here, and another one hopefully in here. I'm not really sure. This third growth is going to have it. My Iwanagara Apple Blossom Pink is having so many spikes, I cannot believe it. So here I have one, here I have another one, here I have another one, here I am going to have another one, and here as well. And I think I'm going to have about 6 or 7 spikes. Many new growths are still growing. This orchid is going crazy right now. So yeah, it usually is waiting for all the spikes, for all the growths to be fully mature, and then it is going to push them in the spring, which would mean that all these growths are going to mature first. And imagine what a spectacle. I'm so sorry, in my country I don't have an orchid show, because this orchid would be very appreciated there. My Phalaenopsis orchids are all spiking, more or less advanced. Here is a growing one. Here I have just the incipient of a one. I have received this orchid from my boyfriend, so I am super excited to see it in bloom. And in here I have a very pretty one, which is unfortunately starting to fade right now. So this is the Miltonia Honolulu crossed with Miltonia Sandcut. This has a quite cute fragrance. I'm going to see if it is able to produce more blooms than this. When I have received it, it had 3 spikes and all of them with 2 buds. So hopefully it is able to produce more than this. In here I have a rebloom from one of my Vandas. It is a very pretty one, quite reddish blooms, but I must say, from the pictures I have received, I was expecting it to look a bit more different, the red to be more pronounced, so I have already sold it. I'm going to ship it quite soon. It is just not justifying the space it takes, so I have so many orchids, I do not have space for orchids that don't amaze me, let's say. Here I have a rebloom from a very pretty and dear orchid to me. This is Dendrobium Polar Fire, and I have received it as a single cane from a friend. It has produced this little cane, which bloomed with 3 little dainty blooms. Very pretty one. Here I have the Phalaenopsis Samera orchid, very pretty one. I did not expect it to be so deep in color. I absolutely love this trait, and the orchid is growing so well for me. I have this orchid from Corina, and it has shipped it for me from Canada. This orchid not only that survived all that transport, but the blooms and the spike actually did not fade away. Quite amazing orchid. My Phalaenopsis schilleriana is growing a little spike in here. I cannot wait to feel the fragrance of this orchid. It is supposed to be quite an amazing one, and it seems to love growing in organic medium with moss. This is a species, and the roots are very sensitive, let's say. They can die very easily, so I wanted not to change the environment, and it seems that it has worked. Here I have some Phalaenopsis orchids in bloom, not quite amazing ones, but quite pretty. A bud from a Cattleya orange. My Catasetum Taiwan Gold. It is growing 2 spikes. I cannot wait to see this orchid in bloom. Supposed to be very, very pretty. Here I have 4 buds from a Cattleya which I have received from Dani. The first time it blooms for me. And I cannot wait to feel her fragrance because Dani raved quite a lot about her fragrance. This is a rebloom from a Cattleya which I really don't remember how it looked like, so quite excited. The Phalaenopsis Leodoro Sweet Memory is still in bloom. This orchid has been in bloom with only 2 buds the entire summer. Was quite disappointed because it grew huge. It grew a lot of roots. It adjusted very well in semi-hydro, but produced only 2 blooms. So yeah, throughout the spring it was growing a cake, so that took quite a lot of energy. I guess right now she is recuperating, so I will not produce any more cakes with cakey paste like I did last year. I will let it grow as she wants. Here I see a second spike, but it is there for about 2 months now, did not grow more, so we are going to see what we are going to get. The Dendrobium Green Elf, which I have recently purchased, it is absolutely huge, and it has here a spike, and more are coming. So here I have another nubbin which is actively growing, and I saw more. Here I have 2 of them. And if you remember that Phalaenopsis with up to 100 blooms, here she still is growing from one of the spikes, but unfortunately it got bended here under its own weight, so I clipped it in, and hopefully the happy sap is still going throughout the stem. I see the tip is still growing, so hopefully that is the case. It is in a waterculture. It has adjusted immediately, and it is growing some more root tips. This orchid is an absolute drinker. I cannot keep up with the watering, so yeah, she is the one which drinks the most from all the orchids in waterculture. I'm going right now to fill up more the vase. As we can see, the roots got to dry completely. That is not something I desire because she is in full waterculture, so that is quite interesting, let's say. Here I have another Phalaenopsis which I have recently purchased in. I have transferred it in waterculture. I have took all the gel balls from all the orchids which are in waterculture. This is a basil plant, doesn't matter, because I saw the root tips did not like the gel balls, so I completely took them away, and they are just growing in the vase and water. Here I have a little spike from Dendrobium Phalaenopsis. Let's see which one it is. The Dendrobium Burana Emerald. This is an amazing orchid, and I see it has adjusted quite well in sphagnums. I put it like this because it did not have almost any roots, so I see it did not shrivel, so I guess it did grow some. I cannot see any at the moment though. My pretty cat is here, of course, as always. And here are some more orchids. I took all the orchids from outdoors except the dendrobiums which require a winter rest because it is too cold at the moment. So here I have the Cattleya orange from Corina with a huge sheet. Hopefully I'm going to see some blooms. And here is an OID, a yellow Cattleya, which has 2 sheets with something inside, so we are going to see more blooms from that. Next we have this cute Brangiara Nelly Eiler. It is still in bloom. This is a sick orchid, but since they are dying anyway, when they are trying to push up spikes, if they don't have enough fruits, I thought I would just let it, and it is currently growing in watercolor, we can see it produced some mold, so I am going to rinse it off. It has responded well after I have changed up the leca beads and the gel balls, and I put up there some rocks, so I'm going to rinse it off of this mold. It is most probably because it has some dried material, so maybe with a toothbrush I am going to scrub it super easily at the base so it does not that again. This this started to dry when it had the gel balls, so that is off. And here I have a very pretty Paph orchid, a yellowish greenish color, huge bloom. It is not opening completely, not happy about that, but it looks nice. It is growing in my bathroom. It is a Paph green envy. Green of envy, as it once said. Here it is my Phalaenopsis Las Vegas, growing quite pretty. Unfortunately, I had two plants and one of them got stem rot. As she is here, I did not yet solve the problem. So the stem of the plant rotted. I ripped it off and let it like this to dry. I also put some fungicide with bactericide. This is why it's blue, but it still died anyway, so I'm going to put it up in some bark, because this orchid is not going to adjust in anything else because it's already sick. And hopefully we are going to get a cake from the base, but I will do a video about that. And here I have my Miltoniopsis orchids. They are still growing. They are drinking so much water this time of the year because they are growing very fast. It is more coolish, they like more, so they grow more. And I finally have a spike on my Zygopetalum orchid. This is a Zygonesia, I think, actually. If I'm going to find its tag, I have it from Schwerter. Zygonesia Murasaki Komadu. Very pretty one, supposed to be a bit bluish. And really excited because pretty soon these huge and pretty Miltoniopsis orchids are going to bloom. And here is my Vanda two-tone lavender. Very pretty one. The blooms are still lasting. They are huge and very pretty. Unfortunately, I did not know where to put it when she's in bloom, because it is in a huge basket, so I just hang it from the window, and that is not something which I recommend. Unfortunately, in the summertime I'm growing it outdoors, it loves it, but now that it's more coolish like, I really don't know what to do, so that is that. Look how pretty she is. Next we have this very cute Phragmipedium orchid. It is in bloom. It is a sequential bloomer. You can see we have quite a lot of pink and a bit of yellow, some stripes. Very cute pouch. A few hairs in here, so she is quite pretty. It has two opened blooms and another bud starting to grow in here. It is a recent purchase. I did not yet get a chance to report it. I found this ID, but I am not really 100% sure it is the correct one, so we are going to see. Next we have here a Phalaenopsis orchid in bloom. This is growing in watercolor, sorry. The blooms are very pretty. We can see that the blooms from when I have purchased it had these bigger dots, and here are the ones which I obtained. And it seems that the orchid in higher light, it is creating more purple, and the dots are more small in size. They are smaller in size, and many of them actually quite pretty. Let me see where it is, the orchid. Here it is. So it is growing in watercolor. It loves it. It has quite a few of algae in there, but the orchid doesn't mind it, so I am okay with it. Here I have a pretty Cattleya orchid, which is right now fading its pretty bloom. This is quite fragrant, but I have a very bad infestation with thrips. I hope you can see that. I really hope that it's showing on camera. There we go. So that is a thrips. So I'm going to do a whole collection treatment. And here the situation is even worse. Here I have Dendrobium phalaenopsis type. This is a Sequential blue. Very pretty blooms. They are even fragrant. I did not knew this orchid is capable of producing a fragrance. And here I have 2 spikes, very pretty ones, from a Vanda orchid which is growing in bark. You remember we have potted this orchid together. The cakeys are also actively growing very nicely. She needs watering. Actually, all my orchids need watering, so I'm going ahead to water them, and then I'm going to do a spray with a very good insecticide, and I will reapply it after 5 days, because it is necessary that I do 2 or 3 treatments when you have a bad infestation. I do know with which orchid the thrips came to my orchid collection, and that is quite sad. I'm not going to purchase any more orchids, and for sure not from that seller, because it is quite sad that when you have 200 orchids, it's hard to do these treatments. Anyway, the forest is looking amazing this time of the year. It is autumn. We have quite a few yellowing leaves there, reddish ones too, so it is really looking pretty. So I think this is all for this video, guys. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comment section below, and I will be more than happy to answer them for you. Thank you very much for watching, and see you all next time. Bye!